Before history, before memory, our story began on one continent, Africa. For millennia, it was a paradise, a cradle of life, rich and abundant. Here, a new kind of human arose, anatomically modern, with minds poised for greatness. They lived in small, tight-knit groups, bound by kinship and the hunt. Life was a constant struggle. Every hunt was a dance with death. In this world, humans were not the masters. They were simply part of the food chain. Survival depended on an intimate knowledge of the land, passed down through generations. For a time, the world was stable. Their universe was this valley. But the planet was changing. The great African pulse began to weaken. The lush paradise that had nourished them for ages was turning to dust. Hunger became a constant companion. The old ways were no longer enough. The future of their children, the very survival of their line, was at stake. A radical idea took hold. To stay meant death. To survive meant leaving. They turned their backs on their only home and walked into the unknown. This was not an invasion. It was a desperate search for a future. The journey would test the limits of human endurance, both physical and mental. Every step was paid for in pain. Every mile, a victory. With no maps, they looked to the oldest guide of all, the stars. In the desolate expanse, every drop of water was a miracle, a reason to continue. They were not the only hunters on this landscape. Danger lurked in every shadow. Ahead lay the first great filter, a vast, unforgiving wilderness. Their strongest bonds were forged in the harshest of moments. Their entire world became the horizon and the feet of those in front. After countless miles, they faced an impossible barrier, an endless wall of water. Their journey across the land was over. A new, terrifying path lay ahead. The sea offered new opportunities, but also new, unimaginable dangers. To survive, they had to adapt, to learn the rhythms of the coast. They followed the coastline, a thin ribbon of life between desert and sea. The ocean tides provided a new, reliable bounty, there for the taking. This new diet, rich in omega-3 seconds, may have fueled their evolving brains. Ahead lay the gate of grief, a narrow passage to a new continent. It was a new world, a new land of promise and of peril. Faced with the impossible, they did what humans do best. They innovated. This single act of courage would change the course of human history forever. There was no turning back. Africa, the mother continent, was now a memory. They were pioneers, adrift between two worlds, armed only with their courage. One small step, the first human footprint on a new continent. They had done it. They had crossed over. Humanity was no longer just African. They left a world behind to claim a new one. The journey had just begun. Everything was alien. The plants, the animals, the very feel of the land. They established a fragile foothold in this vast, empty world. Every day was a lesson. Every plant, a potential food or a poison. The rules of the hunt had changed. They had to learn, or they would starve. Even in the struggle, moments of wonder connected them to this new home. For generations, they followed the coast, populating the new world 1 mile at a time. Fresh water was the key. Rivers were the arteries of this new land. Their minds were also evolving. Their tools became deadlier, more precise. And here, the first sparks of art. A hand reaching out from the past. The coastal highway had led them to a crossroads, the gateway to Asia. But they were not alone. Another kind of human already called this world home. In this silent meeting, 2 human lineages sized each other up. The landscape was a complex chessboard of encounter and avoidance. Sometimes, the best strategy was not to fight, but to watch and learn. A new enemy appeared, one they had never known in Africa, the bitter cold. To conquer the cold, they had to conquer the giants of the Ice Age. A single kill meant life. It meant warmth, food, and security. At the foot of the great mountains, the human family began to divide. The lure of the horizon was too strong. The journey eastward continued. With every new landscape, a new set of challenges and opportunities arose. They were no longer Africans. They were becoming the people of the world. They plunged into the lush, tropical worlds of South Asia. Their technology advanced, giving them a deadly new advantage in the hunt. The great rivers of Asia became their guides, their source of life. New skills allowed them to better harvest the riches of this new land. They reached a lost world, a sunken continent of islands and shallow seas. To conquer this water world, they had to become people of the sea. They began the first great maritime expansion in human history. The ocean was a new wilderness, full of its own ancient inhabitants. Each island was a new Eden, a fresh start for the migrating groups. But this new paradise had its own furies, its own seasons of destruction. Through stories, the epic journey was kept alive, transformed into myth. The children of the journey knew nothing of Africa. Home was here. One last barrier remained, the widest, most dangerous stretch of ocean yet. Before challenging the ocean, they looked to the heavens for guidance and strength. This was the final leap of faith into the vast, blue unknown. Driven by a spirit of discovery, they sailed beyond the edge of the world. On the open sea, their greatest enemy was despair, their greatest asset, hope. And then, after days of nothing, a shadow on the horizon, a new hope. They had found it, a truly new world, isolated for millions of years. The great journey from Africa was over, but a new story was just beginning. The northern branch of the family now faced the ultimate test, a continent frozen in time. Here, the enemy was not just hunger, but a relentless, killing cold. Survival demanded new ingenuity. The technology of tailored clothing was born. For the first time in millennia, two different human species met face to face. The Neanderthals, the original Europeans who had ruled this land for 300,000 years. They were now neighbors and rivals, competing for the same scarce resources. The newcomers brought with them a deadly new advantage: long-range projectile technology. But it was not always a story of conflict. Sometimes it was one of connection. A long reign was ending. The world was changing too fast for the Neanderthals. Deep within the earth, the human mind ignited. A new, symbolic world was born. This was more than art. It was a cathedral of memory, a connection to the spirit world. Meanwhile, the eastern branch of the family pushed into the heart of Asia. They entered a lost world, the Mammoth Steppe, a cold, vibrant Serengeti. They built homes from the bones of the giants they hunted. They were masters of the cold. A new generation was born here, adapted to the harshest climate on Earth. The long Arctic nights brought their own magic, a sky of dancing spirits. Their relentless journey took them to the very edge of the old world. The Ice Age locked up the oceans, revealing a hidden road, a gateway to a new world. Driven by the ancient urge to see what lay beyond the horizon, they followed the herds. With these first steps, humanity unknowingly stepped into a new hemisphere. They lived on this land bridge for thousands of years, trapped between two worlds. Their path south was blocked by 2-mile-high walls of ice. There was no way through. As the planet warmed, the great ice sheets finally began to part. They took the path south, a dangerous corridor between melting giants. They stepped into a paradise, a continent that had never known a human footstep. And they carried with them a beautifully crafted, deadly invention, the Clovis Point. The great beasts of this new world had no fear of this small new predator. It was a hunter's paradise, a world of unimaginable abundance. In just over 1,000 years, they swept across 2 continents. A new apex predator had arrived, and the old order was about to be broken. They adapted to every new environment, from deserts to rainforests. But this paradise came at a price. For the great beasts, it was a death sentence. As the giants vanished, they adapted again, hunting the great herds of bison. After millennia of wandering, some groups began to put down roots. The domestication of plants would fuel the rise of new, great civilizations. In a final, great pulse, they pushed to the furthest corners of the land. Their journey led them to the jagged spine of the world, at the very end of the continent. They had reached the end of the line. There was no more land to walk upon. The great migration was over. From a small corner of Africa, we had inherited the earth. In their eyes, the reflection of a 100,000-year journey, the story of all of us, an epic journey written into the coastlines, the mountains, and our very DNA. The descendants of these pioneers would go on to build the modern world, but the echoes of our deepest past can still be found where it all began. Science allows us to reach back in time, to touch the faces of our ancestors, and to read the genetic map that proves we are all one human family. They left behind a message, a testament to the timeless human spirit. Their journey gave us the entire world, a single, fragile, beautiful home. The future of that world is now the greatest journey we all share. It began with a spark of curiosity in a world that was changing forever. It sparked a journey into the unknown. Across vast and desolate lands, to the shores of a new beginning, an impossible leap of faith that opened up the entire world. They met other humans along the way and became masters of the great hunt. Their paths diverged, spreading to all corners. They conquered the seas and set foot on new continents. They faced worlds of ice and ignited an explosion of creativity, witnessing the end of an ancient world under skies of impossible beauty. They crossed the bridge to a new world and discovered a hunter's paradise, a world of giants ripe for the taking. Their success spread like wildfire. They adapted and they conquered. They planted the seeds of civilization, pushing to the absolute limits of the earth until the long walk was finally done. From one family in Africa to a family of the Ice Age, to a family of the Arctic, to a family that inherited the world. In every face, a different chapter of the same single human story. A story that is written on all our faces. One journey, one family, one home.